Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching this live webinar from. Welcome to another episode of South African Coin Talk. And today we are privileged to have in the house with us none other than Professor Francois Malan, who's going to give us a very interesting presentation today based on the counterfeits of the ZAR Ponde. Before we go into that, we will go into some current affairs in numismatics from locally and around the world. But just as a special note of thanks, I just want to say that this webinar has been sponsored by Dr. Morgan Carroll. And once again, without that sponsorship, we won't be able to host a webinar of this nature. So thank you, Dr. Morgan Carroll. I have apologies from Glenn Skuman. He's given us his apologies. Unfortunately, he had an emergency to attend to for this weekend, and he would have loved to have been here, but he gives his best regards to everyone. And hopefully the next meeting, he will be here to give us feedback from a dealer's point of view and from a South African numismatic point of view. So it has been interesting last year. We ended off on a good note. We had the talk by Everhard Vissers on the Kruger's Bluebacks, and that was received very well by everyone. Prior to that, we had Pierre Nortje giving us a talk. Professor Francois Malan with his talk on Kruger's Gold. So we did have some very entertaining, structured talks for 2020. And this year, we hope to start off with a bang again. I speak to Professor Francois Malan from time to time, and during our discussions on numismatics, something sparks to light, and that leads to either a book or another talk. So Francois has done a great piece of work. I've had a privilege of looking at this presentation prior to it being presented live now. And yeah, I think you guys are going to really enjoy that. Current affairs. Firstly, a big congratulations to Reginald Moodley. He is now the president of the Pietermaritzburg Numismatic Society. So those of you guys that want to join that society, you're more than welcome to contact either Reginald Moodley or Professor Michael Laidlaw. What I did notice is the demand for 1 ounce silver Krugerrands. None of the dealers seem to have supply of it, so the demand is greater than the supply, and these coins are selling at a premium. When I say a premium, it's more than double the face value of a 1 ounce silver value. And people are buying them. They're buying them by packs of 25. Unfortunately, these coins are not minted in South Africa. They're minted in America and brought into South Africa. So the suppliers cannot supply the demand, and whatever Rand Refinery gets, it is sold out within a few minutes. So I'm not sure why the demand is so high for that and the premium so high. The other thing that came to light in 2020 was the release from the South African Mint of the so-called hoard. Now, that was a very interesting subject line, because we all know that there was a bag of Kruger Ponde and half Ponde that went on auction in overseas. And they were selling them in lots of 20 and 30 coins. The condition of these coins, unfortunately, was not really uncirculated, but some of the coins that was graded as detailed grade, meaning that they had defects on it. So they were well circulated coins. Now, the big question to ask here is that part of the Kruger millions that is presumed to have been stolen? We don't know, really. A bag of coins, I don't think will make up for the Kruger millions. The interesting story around this hoard is that the South African Mint, who is a company that was supposed to be minting coins, have now gone into the business of buying coins. And they bought up quite a large number of these Ponde and half Ponde. They subsequently had it graded by NGC in a specialized holder, and the designation that was given on the coins was, or is, the hoard. So a good opportunity and a good marketing ploy. They put it in a very specialized holder with a commemorative 1/10 coin labeled as the hoard. Now, Francois, I know that you had a sort of relationship with the hoard because you would have been part of it, including your book. You want to elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, I can't tell you that I actually discovered this hoard. So I was actually pulled in afterwards as well. And of course, occasionally I do a bit of work for the Mint. So I actually wrote the small booklet that actually accompanied the product. But unfortunately, I couldn't really get to the bottom of it in terms of the source of these particular coins. Look, it's a story, the story that's being told. It was actually found in a Swiss bank. Apparently it was in the Netherlands prior to the war, and then it was moved to a Swiss bank, and then after many decades it was actually discovered there. And that's unfortunately all information we've actually got at this stage. But I must admit the marketing of the Mint was actually very, very good, because it's actually a very nice product if you actually open one of those, because it's packaged in one of the replica bags as well, in which they apparently found these coins. And we're not even sure if these coins were actually found in that bag. But it's actually a very nice product. And look, I suppose the eventual aim is to promote numismatics in South Africa. And so in a way, I'm actually supporting this particular product, because at least it's actually raised the interest in terms of the ZAR Ponde. But they're actually quite expensive. When I looked at the prices for the uncirculated coins, even the common 98 Ponde, they actually pricey. So believe me, I haven't got one in my collection, so I'm not sure how many you bought, Anthony.
No, I haven't got any yet, but hopefully I will. I personally, that's my personal view. Yes, it is nice to have, but I didn't see the merit in the premium for those coins, especially with the low quality and low graded coins. It's nice to have, but I think that'll be a discussion for myself at a later stage, whether I would want to buy or not.
Yes. Now, if perhaps I should just add one thing. The interesting thing about those particular sets, of course, are the 10th and the quarter-ounce Krugers that with the special mint mark of the lost hoard that's actually packaged with those Ponde. And I think of now I'm trying to remember that figure of the half Ponde, there's only 219, if I recall correctly. So there's only going to be 219 of those 10th ounce Krugers with the special mint mark. So that in itself is probably going to be quite rare and probably quite sought after. And I think those half Ponde is actually sold out now already, and the people are probably more after the Kruger Rand than the actual Ponde.
Well, I would say that to me, I don't think it's a coin; it's a medallion that they put in there. So
it's actually a Kruger Rand.
It's a Kruger Rand. Okay.
It's a 10th ounce Kruger Rand with the half Ponde, and a quarter ounce Kruger Rand with the full Ponde.
So I think collectors are going to go more for the limited Kruger Rands rather than the coin itself.
That's possible. I think that's probably what's happening currently.
Okay, cool. All right, but it would be nice to get the actual story behind these coins, because the thing that I heard from one of the collectors locally, there were more than 1,000 coins that actually went on sale. And there was a write-up on the website of this auction house that gave the history about it. Apparently, it was a Boer War general that it belonged to, okay? Because they apparently sold his war medals as well. But because people phoned in after that and started asking questions about it, they removed that information from the internet. Now, we don't know whether it was an English general or whether it was a Boer general, because that would give us more insight as to whether this bag is part of the hoard.
Yeah, look, it's a very interesting comment, and of course, you know me and you know my personality. I'm incredibly curious about these things, and where did the coins really come from? And even in that book, Kruger's Gold, I actually had right at the end of the book, I've got a few paragraphs on this last hoard, and I'm actually speculating that it's even possible that it's actually a number of different packages that was actually assembled in one bag. In a particular bag and in a particular bank. So there's no guarantee that this was a single hoard of coins that actually belong to a general. And I'm afraid that information might actually be lost. Yeah. I'm not sure if we're ever going to get to the bottom of this.
No, I don't think so. But the interesting fact about that hoard is there were two 1898 99 overstruck coins that was part of that. And they actually had quite good grades on it.
Yes, look, of course, that's very interesting as well. The list I saw from at the mint actually only had one 99 overstruck coin. So it's interesting if you're correct that there were actually two in that particular parcel. And of course, yeah, they're worth a fortune. They're very nice coins.
No, they would be. They would be, especially if they graded high. Okay, that's so much I have for current affairs. Without further ado, we're going to go straight into our subject for today. And Francois, I just want to say a big thank you to you for all the effort that you have put into South African numismatics. So I'm going to hand over to you to actually run through your presentation.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Anthony. Now, just our earlier discussion, I'm very keen that we try to do this as an interactive session. So if I'm busy on particular slides, you're more than welcome to raise your hand. And Anthony is probably going to keep an eye on that because I'll have the full screen of the presentation in front of me, so I won't be able to see your hands. But please feel free to interrupt me at any stage in the presentation, and if you've got questions. Let's see how it works if we try to do this as an interactive session. So don't be shy to interrupt me. Now I'm going to share the presentation.
Just to add to that, Francois, guys, if you look, there is a Q&A button at the bottom. You can also type in questions. If you want to come live onto this panel, please state so as well. I'll bring you into the panel. Okay, so you can raise your hand and I can bring you in, or you can type in the Q&A. Over to you, Francois.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen now, and Anthony, if you can just confirm that you actually see this presentation on your screen.
Yep, I do.
Okay, excellent. Now, look, let me start then. Anthony was very keen. As a numismatic community, it's very important that we actually get together every now and then. And those of you know me well, of course, I'm in favor that we occasionally write publications as well, because that's a very important thing to keep the community alive. And Anthony, a while ago, he actually requested me to talk about the second decimal series. I think we can actually open that book again. But let's keep it in the pocket, because recently I stumbled upon something, and I thought as a good introduction to 2021 to start this series of presentations, let's just have a look at the counterfeits, the Ponde in the old Levine collection, because the amazing thing is I really enjoy that particular black book, and I'll show you a copy. I think all of you are familiar with that book. And recently I was able to obtain photographs, recent color photographs of the forgeries in that Levine collection. And this gave me a lot of additional information, and it's definitely worthwhile to actually discuss it. And what I also want to do is I want to discuss some other aspect related to forgeries. Now, Anthony, just help me again. Can you actually see this cursor I'm moving around on the screen, because I'm going to use it in the presentation?
Sorry, if you can move your cursor.
Yes. Do you see anything?
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay, great stuff. So this is just explanation of the contents in the particular presentation, and this will assist you to keep track where I am. I'm going to give you a short introduction and a bit more motivation why I'm very keen to give this presentation. The history of these Levine forgeries are very interesting. I'm going to discuss that. You had a big auction, of course, in 1975, and I'm going to show you some of the auction material. And then the important thing for you as a reference, I'm going to include that recent color photo, those photographs I was able to obtain of these forgeries. And of course, this presentation is a very nice reference for the numismatic community. And I'm actually going to ask Anthony to distribute it to everybody present as well. And as a team, there's some questions about this in fact, there's my first typo. See, there's a very young Ponde, but that's the 1898 elite forgery. Then some new ZAR forgeries. I think we need to start compiling some of the new forgeries that's currently available after Levine wrote his book. So a new book is probably needed. So I'm going to show some of these new forgeries. The Chinese problem, I just want to briefly touch on that. And then, of course, we as a collecting community, what can we actually do to protect the hobby against all these forgeries? So let me immediately start with the introduction. As I mentioned, these ZAR forgeries, I was so surprised to see after all these years that they recently surfaced again. And as I mentioned, I was able to obtain very nice color photographs of them. And the amazing thing is they still assembled as a set after almost 50 years. And this is a mystery to me because somebody must have actually bought that entire collection, and I'll come to that a bit later. And I could obtain those color photographs. And of course, it's a very valuable, this presentation is a valuable photographic record. Then if you've got a coin and you're very suspicious about this particular coin, that it might be a forgery, then you can actually compare it to these photographs. And recently as well, on one of the auction websites, I saw a possible F16. Now, of course, these Fs, those of you not familiar with Levine's book, he numbered all these forgeries, and that's forgery number 16 in Levine's book, the wagon variety. And I had a suspicion it was one of those F16s. And I actually sent a private message to the person who was selling that, and I didn't get a good response when I actually asked these questions. I was just very curious, and I actually wanted to see better photographs of the coins, just to see, of the particular coin, just to see if it might be a possible forgery. And then with that particular reaction, I actually realized we as a community need a proper discussion on forgeries again, and we need to be aware of them again. And then, of course, the risk of new forgeries made in China, that's ever present, and we need to mobilize the coin community to really hunt for these fakes. And that's, in a way, part of the fun of this hobby, to discover the first person to discover the new Chinese forgery. This is just photographs of that coin I actually saw on the auction website. And the person who listed it there, he actually described it as an 1892 ZAR half point with a poor strike, but as mint luster. And I suppose that's already a giveaway. Proof-like, but back marks are present. Now you can already see the details of the coat of arms is quite worn, but the field actually looks very good. And now if you compare that to Levine's description of his F-16 forgery, almost in uncirculated condition, but the wagon, the anchor, even the line appears to be reproduced from a VG or an F coin. So is it one of those forgeries? Unfortunately, I can't tell because I wasn't able to handle the coin or get better photographs. So, okay, let's go to Levine's forgeries. Now, the interesting thing is, and I only discovered this the other day as well, when I started reading about Eli Levine. He started collecting coins as far back as 1968. I'm not going to give my age away, but believe me, I was very young in 1968, and Levine was already collecting these forgeries in those years. And then barely 6 years later, this is absolutely amazing. He really went big into this, go big or go home. He definitely went the big route, because only 6 years later, he published this famous book, The Coinage and Counterfeit of the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republiek. And of course, it's this famous black book. And there's constantly second-hand copies for sale on Bidderbuy, for example, so it's very easy to source a copy if you want one. I was actually very fortunate because some years ago I was actually browsing in a second-hand bookshop in Melville, and then I stumbled on this particular copy, and the lady working there told me it was one of Levine's family who actually sold the book to her. So this was Levine's personal copy of the book. And you can see there's some very interesting photographs in here, and you'll understand where it came from. Prime Minister of South Africa, that was John Foster, signed this particular copy. There's the granddaughters of President Burgess. He had the two granddaughters signing his book, and John J. Pittman was, of course, that famous American collector, also signed his book, and Levine's signature there at the end of the page. But what a lot of people don't know is there was a special leather-bound copy of this particular book available as well. I'm not sure how many of you have already seen a copy of this leather-bound book. It's incredibly difficult to find. Of course, my hobby is at this stage is probably more collecting numismatic literature than actually collecting coins. So this red leather-bound book is actually very special. And in those years, it was actually incredibly expensive because this was an advertisement in 1974 when this book was actually launched. And if you can read the fine print there, the standard edition, the one with the black dust cover, that actually sold for R8.75 in 1974. But that red leather-bound edition was R25. And a slightly earlier advertisement, I haven't got it in this presentation, but it was initially listed for R30. Now, I looked up the average gold price in 1974, and that was approximately 119 Rand per ounce. So Levine, for that little rate, just let me go back, for this book, he was actually asking almost a quarter of a Kruger Rand if you wanted to buy one of those things. So these books were very pricey in those years as well. But anyway, this book was launched at the 5th Coin Convention in 1974. That was probably one of the biggest coin conventions that was ever held in South Africa. And it was held there in the Carlton Center, in the Carlton Hotel, and probably in those ballrooms. They were very nice. Look, there were a lot of presentations. And the Prime Minister, there you see him in the photograph, John Foster. He actually opened that coin convention, and there you see him looking at Levine's display. And Levine's display, there you see a copy of the book. And these forgeries of Levine is probably in that display cabinet as well. Now, it's a fantastic book. I suppose when I started collecting look, that's donkeys years ago. But I picked up a copy of this particular book, and of course I read it cover to cover. I was fascinated by this book. Very nice book, but the problem with this particular book is there's very small photographs. So if you've got a coin and you've got a suspicion that it might actually be a forgery, of course there is not a lot of color photographs in that particular book. It's very difficult with these tiny photographs. You can't see whether your coin is a forgery or not. And then even some of the black and white color pictures are not that clear. So the one thing, brilliant book, but the one thing that's always been missing from this particular book is a very nice set of color photographs that we can actually use to compare these forgeries with. The other interesting thing, of course, is what Levine did is he collected all these forgeries, or all the forgeries in his possession. And then he actually adopted the practice to stamp them with a small f, just to indicate that they were forgeries. Those of you that know the book very well, apparently you saw this practice. There was a stamp collector in Cape Town, and he saw this guy treating a stamp forgery in this manner by stamping a small f at the back of the stamp. So Levine started doing this the same with these forgeries as well, and his motivation was that the coins can never be sold as genuine again. So there's definitely some merit in that, I suppose. And this was probably a bit ambitious, that second bullet point. He was hoping that the people making these forgeries will, if we do this on a consistent basis, they would actually lose interest in this particular market and stop making these forgeries. And I don't think that really happened. But the interesting thing is, he complained in the book, not all collectors actually agreed with this practice, because some of these collectors, of course, wanted to collect these forgeries, and they don't wanted the coin to be spoiled with this particular F stamped on it. And you can see here, depending on where you put the F, you lose some of the detail of the particular forgery. But anyway, he stamped all his forgeries with this particular F. And then only a year later, this is also interesting. I don't fully understand it. He probably wanted to divert his business into more of the Krugerrand type business, but he actually decided to sell his entire collection of ZAR coins. So there was this big Phoenix postal auction. So in the number 9, he listed all his coins, and all those forgeries, which is listed in the black book, is actually listed in this postal auction as well. And if you haven't got a copy of this postal auction, I recently discovered Wits University in their archives has actually got a full copy of this particular book. So I've listed the website for you there, so at least you can download it, because these auction catalogs are actually becoming quite scarce now as well. So inside that auction catalog, he listed all these forgeries. And I'm not going to go through all of them at this stage, and you can see the reserve prices. Those were the good days when you can actually build a very nice collection. It would actually be nice getting auctions nowadays where the reserve price is only 15 Rand, but unfortunately that's not going to happen anymore. So there was the half pond forgeries for sale, and here's the pond forgeries for sale. And the particular one I want to spend a bit of time today is this elite forgery, because I've never seen one, and it would be interesting to hear from the audience if any of you have ever seen one of these elite forgeries. But I'm jumping the gun. I'm going to get to that a bit later. So there's all the lots for these forgeries. With the reserve prices and the selling price in the auction number 10, of course, the selling prices are listed. There you see the prices. The Ponde, of course, there's more gold in it, so they were slightly more expensive. And of course, the highest price was obtained for that silver half pond, which I'll discuss as well now. So, and it's interesting that Levine actually considered that as quite a rare coin as well. So that must probably be quite difficult to obtain. So the total set sold for 584 Rand in those years. And as I mentioned, the Kruger rand was approximately 119. So the people felt in those years you probably need 5 Kruger rands. The set was really valued at 5 Kruger rands. Who bought the set at that auction? Unfortunately, I don't know. It would actually be nice. That's actually a pity about a lot of these famous South African coins, is we do lose a lot of the history and who were the actual owners. We actually very secretive in South Africa in terms of what happened to the coins. And just to add to that, for example, the single 9 coin, it's probably somewhere overseas at this stage, but I wonder if any of you know where that coin is. That's a good question. I don't know myself. Now let's go through some of the recent these color photographs I was able to obtain, and this is the valuable photographic record for you as a community. Just a bit of some comments. As I mentioned, surprisingly, the sets still seem intact. But when I look at the auction catalog and the photographs I got, the 1900 forgery is not there, because Levine's one was stamped with a F. And even though the 1900 forgery was actually listed as a X Levine, it didn't have that same F stamped on it as the one in the auction catalog. But I'm very intrigued about this, and unfortunately I can't get to the bottom of it. It's almost like this lost art where we haven't got all the information. I've got a suspicion one particular individual must have bought all these forgeries at that 1975 auction, because there's no other way. If different buyers bought the different forgeries, I can't believe that somebody was actually able to assemble the entire set again. But anyway, the coins seem to be currently encapsulated and labeled by Sangs. So here's the photograph. The one thing I was very curious if the photographs I've got are the actual Levine forgeries. And one way to do that, of course, is just to compare the position and the shape of the F stamped on the various coins. And here you can see that was that silver half pond. And if you look carefully, you can see the position and the shape of the F is identical. Even that little mark on the coin seems to be replicated. So I actually did this with all the coins, and that gave me the proof that the photographs I got was in fact the original Levine forgeries, and the ones he actually used to write the book about. So here's the forgeries. The 1892 half point, the F14, is called the 2 variety by Levine, and he actually called it the 2 variety because the end of the 2 has got this funny wriggle, so it's actually quite easy to identify. But the easier way to identify this coin, of course, it's a 92 coin, and then on the O, it's actually got this tail on the O, and that's very prominent. So if you I've got a suspicion that any of the half ponde in your possession is one of these forgeries, the easiest is to actually look at that O. And this is how Levine actually identified the F15, the silver half point, because the O had that identical mark or tail attached to it as well, and the 2 at the identical shape at the end of the 2. The other famous half pond is the wagon variety, and that was the one I showed at the beginning, which of the presentation as a possible forgery, and it was actually identified as a forgery because the fields are still in a very good condition. You can actually see it very nicely in this particular photograph, so that the coin almost looks perfect, but look in what a worn condition the wagon is, and you can even see it on the lion, and the anchor is worn away as well. So that's impossible. How can that be worn to this extent while there's almost no scratches in the actual field of the coin? This one is very easy to identify, F19, the long nose variety, because Kruger doesn't look at all like his effigy on the other coins. And interesting I've never ever seen one of these coins in my own life, so I'm not sure how common this particular forgery is, and if any of you have actually picked up this particular forgery. The easy to find forgeries are these Z-type forgeries, and you get them in the dates 94, 97, and 98. And they're very easy to identify because Kruger has got this cut on his nose, not that one, it's that cut on his nose, the cut on his lip, and there's a cut in the Z and a cut in the Z there, and I've got an enlargement on the next slide. But even if you look at these coins, they don't look right, and they're actually quite easy to identify. And there's the 97, and you can see it's the same cut on the nose. I'm going to talk later about this, but NGC started introducing the term repeating depressions, and that's an easy way to identify a forgery. And the same cuts in the Z. And here's an enlargement, the cut on the nose, the lip, and there's the cut straight through the Z there and at the bottom as well. So they're very easy to identify, and I have seen them appearing on the market from time to time. So they're actually quite common. And here's the 98 one, the same thing. Now the overstamp, the FUC, I skipped one because I want to dedicate entire section to F27.
Francois,
Yes,
Werner has got a question. Let me try and bring him in.
Please go for it. It always makes these talks interesting, so please present your question. I'm not hearing anything. Can you hear, Anthony?
Yeah, Werner, you can go for it. You can talk. Unmute yourself. You're currently on mute, Werner.
Seems as if Werner has got some problems with his sound, possibly, Anthony. Shall I continue in the meantime?
Okay. Yeah, you can continue, Francois. Werner, if you can post your question on the Q&A or chat.
Okay, and look, the overstamp forgeries are actually quite common as well. Anthony actually sent me some nice photographs as well, and this is the photograph that was sent to me that accompanied the Levine collection as well. So, and the interesting thing is Levine made the comment in his book, this is the easiest coin in the world to forge, and he's so right, because you just take a genuine 1898 Ponde, and you get yourself a nice metal stamp, and you actually stamp those two nines on your coin, and then you've actually got your forgery. But luckily, amongst the seasoned collectors, the shape of that 9 is so well known, and so it's actually quite easy to identify those. And then the one that's incredibly easy to identify as well is the F30, which Levine actually referred to as the perfect forgery, for the simple reason that was stamped from original dies, and because higher pressures were used, the breast of the eagle is beautiful. So these are actually beautiful coins, very easy to detect, because until that stage, when these appeared on the market, the only 1900 Ponde that was known to the collectors had a very flat breast of the eagle. Now, in my previous presentation last year, I included this, but I decided to actually repeat it in this presentation. For a very long time, and it's a popular belief, people felt that the breast of the eagle actually became flat because the dies, the master dies actually in Germany became worn. But that is actually not correct, because recently some dies of 1900 surfaced, and you can actually see the breast of the eagle is in a very good condition. And this particular coin was used during the court case when this guy who actually manufactured these forgeries, of course, he was caught, and there was a court case, and then the police had some coins struck from some dies, and you can actually see the breast of the eagle 1900 is perfect as well. So it's definitely not master dies that was worn. So when I spoke to Tommy Sassine a while ago, he gave these coins one look, and he said there wasn't enough pressure there, because Kruger's head, of course, is at the back of this eagle, so there's metal starvation. So it was simply because the mint wasn't using enough pressure when they were actually minting these coins. Now, here's one of my hypotheses, and we can argue about this. I'll be happy if somebody proves me wrong. But the mint could have even done this on purpose to ensure that the dies could actually last a bit longer. Because remember, the 1899 dies were intercepted by the British during the Boer War, so they could never use that. And they had a huge problem at the mint, because they had to, the dies that were available, the 98 dies during the war, and they had to ensure those actually survive as long as possible. So, and even the 1900 dies then as well. So there's one possible hypothesis for you to chew on. Okay, now, apologies again for that typo. It's 1898 elite forgery. Now, Levine had a whole chapter, he's got a whole chapter in his book on this F27 elite forgery. Now, what an interesting coin, because for years I was reading this book, and there's not a very good photograph in Levine's book. And I was always very suspicious. Well, I was trying to find one of these elite forgeries, because Levine made the comment, so excellent, here's my cursor, so excellent is the workmanship on this forgery that it's far and away the most difficult of all the ZAR forgeries to detect. And there was a very famous coin dealer, and he assisted Levine to actually pick up this as a possible forgery amongst the whole bunch of Ponde that was actually lying on the desk. Now, some of you are actually much better at identifying these forgeries than I am. So just have a look at these photographs, and hopefully it's clear on your screen. My question to you this afternoon is this in fact a forgery? I'm so happy about this photograph, because it is, as I demonstrated earlier, I used this F to identify this as the original coin which Levine used to write his book about. So this was the original F27. Is this really a forgery? And some of the arguments he eventually used, he studied the coin in detail after it was identified by that dealer. And the reasons he gave for this coin to be a forgery was that the wheels actually merge into the wagon. And there you can probably see from the photograph I've got where it's happening. The high point on the wagon is worn away. And he hypothesized that it was actually struck from reconditioned dies. And because they probably used sandpaper or something in this particular area, that's why the detail is worn away. And here you see the problem with Levine's book on the right. This is the black and white photograph. So it's incredibly difficult to actually use this photograph. And if you're suspicious about a particular coin, and you might think that it's the F27, it's very difficult to compare with this. And at least we've got slightly better detail. However, I took one of my own Ponde and just photograph, and in fact this was in fact a photograph I published in some of my earlier books, and I actually just compared it to this photograph of the F27 I've got now. So you can see that head is worn, but of course there's some damage in the field of this particular coin as well. Now I suppose that one is slightly worn as well. Just look at the detail. This is the F27. And this detail actually doesn't look too bad, in fact. And this is what my coin, which I consider as a genuine coin, and there's the detail. And I've enlarged it here, and you can actually see the detail on the anchor of the coin I consider as genuine, might even be worse than Levine's F27. Now, this immediately raises the question, is this really a forgery? Perhaps somebody in the audience can help. Was another F27 ever found? I asked that question. And my hypothesis is this possibly a poor strike caused by the rush during the war. And we already discussed the issue in terms of possible weak pressures, which was used when they actually minted these coins. So we actually need to discuss this at the end of this presentation, or we can actually stop there if there's any questions. Werner, are you back online?
Werner said he'll ask his question later on, but just coming back
Okay.
to this particular coin, Francois, is that I've studied it quite in depth, and
yeah, I can't wait for this answer, Anthony.
It reminds me of the biblical side of things, where Pilate said, "I find no fault in this man." I actually find no fault in this coin.
Yeah, you see, that's always the difficulty with this. And I suppose we can ask everybody who signed in is if they've got a F27, well, I suppose we can't do it anonymously, but just type there, yes, I've got a F27. But I've got a suspicion this coin was never found again. And I wonder if I'm right.
It probably is. I think this is a once-off, because we all know that 1898, there's a lot available in the market, and I certainly have not seen this, even in the Ponde that I have.
Yes.
And you're possibly right. I mean, if you look at your genuine coin compared to the picture that you've depicted now, the color photograph, your one looked actually
worse,
more suspect than the original.
So I've discovered a new forgery.
I think so.
Good. Okay, let's leave that there for the time being. The one thing I'm very keen to do, and this is actually a plea to the audience today, I think we need to have a central repository of these forgeries that we occasionally stumble upon, because we probably need to start thinking about compiling an update to Levine's book. So what are the new forgeries out there? And of course, one that's very common is this 5 shilling that is currently being minted in China. And I've studied one in a lot of detail, and I actually started calling this the HE forgery for the very simple reason. These repeating depression marks, you'll see there at the top of the H, those cut in the legs of the H, and these cuts in the E actually appear on all the coins on the obverse. And on the reverse, I've actually seen this in 2 out of 3 coins. So that's a very common mark as well on these forgeries. The weights of these coins vary from 23 grams to 28 grams. So obviously they're using different alloys to mint these things. And I've actually seen coin and metal struck versions of this particular coin. The Chinese probably discovered that they initially, when they made this forgery, it wasn't a coin, so it must be a metal struck thing, and that's why they actually changed it.
That's a question for you from
yes.
The panel is that would this be a forgery that comes out of the East?
Yes. I've got some evidence now, which I'm going to show on a later slide. In fact, you can actually buy one of these forgeries online today if you want to. So it's definitely one coming out of the East. It's coming out of Alibaba.
Okay, so it is.
It's
definitely a Chinese.
Yeah, it's definitely a Chinese
production.
one. I'm going to get to that in a second. This 1895, when I actually prepared for this presentation, I started searching the internet for possible forgeries as well, and I didn't realize that NGC on their website has actually got a couple of very nice articles on forgery. So it's definitely worthwhile for everybody to go on there. And they've got articles on 2 South African forgeries, which is amazing because in a way this is awkward because we as South African collectors actually need to pick these things up. We shouldn't wait for somebody to actually send these coins to NGC and then NGC pick it up. But they focus a lot on, and I mentioned it earlier in the presentation, it's a term they call repeating depression. And just to go back to this HE thing, this is a repeating depression because you actually find it on all the forgeries. And what happens is they actually take a coin and which might be worn, and from that worn coin they produce a set of dies. And then, of course, all the damage in the original coin is transferred to the die. So as you strike a new coin, that depression is actually reproduced on all the forgeries they make. And that's why NGC actually calls it a repeating depression. But this 1895 half-point forgery, I've never seen this, but they had a couple of examples. So I've encircled the red, the repeating depressions here, as they did on the website. So if you find any of these 95 half-ponde, just look for these repeating depressions. The same thing, Levine didn't focus a lot on the silver coins and forgeries of the silver coins. But of course, the 1893, this 2.5 shilling, this coin is worth a lot, so it's worthwhile to make a forgery. But this one NGC picked up, and the repeating depressions, the easiest to spot. Look, these are different coins, so you can see that mark is repeating, and that mark is repeating, and there's a big scratch on the reverse at the bottom as well.
Francois, just to go back to the 1893 half a crown.
Yes.
So recently it was found that there were quite a few coins that have been sold on the internet and even locally, where 1893 and 94, the date, the 3 on the 93 and the 4 on the 94 differs drastically.
Yes, and in fact, yes. Now I feel so bad because you sent me brilliant photographs, and that's the other photograph I should have included. I actually forgot. So it's a completely different 4, so it's very easy to identify. Just compare it to a genuine coin. You can just open any of your coin books and you'll see that the 4 is a completely different shape than on the genuine coin. So thanks for that comment, and apologies, Anthony, for not including that in the presentation.
Yeah, including the 93.
Okay, but now, of course, one needs to be careful because not every coin is going to be a forgery. And that's the difficulty I'm stuck with as well. Some years ago, these 2 coins were sold to me as possible forgeries. And I'm still not sure that these coins are actually forgeries, in fact. Now, if you look at this particular half-point 94, you can see the detail is not bad, but in this particular spot, look, the line is almost completely worn away and a lot of the detail is lost in that particular spot. So is that sign of a forgery? I don't know. And this particular one was also sold as a suspect forgery, but yes, the more I look at this coin, the more it actually looks as a genuine coin. I don't know. I'll leave it up to you to actually give me advice on this. Now, let's quickly have a look at the Chinese problem. Just browsing the internet, it's immediately obvious that there's actually a massive problem in the East. And look, I've copied some of these headlines, and it's typical of the American numismatic journals that actually publish this material. Modern Chinese counterfeit coins inside the counterfeiting ring. Chinese fakes, this is the worrying part. Chinese fakes ever more deceptive. Counterfeit production in high gear. These photographs are easy to find on the internet, and it just shows one of those operations. Somebody went undercover, and look, it looks very primitive. Look how dilapidated this old press looks like. But you can see the dies. So they're actually manufacturing, these dies seem to be manufactured to quite a high standard. So it's good quality dies. Now, this is the obscure operation, but this is a counterfeit operation as well. And look at this fantastic machinery they've got. This is a modern factory. And there's even an electroplating production line as well. So a massive problem. And just to show you some examples, this is a Morgan dollar, and it was published on the web, and the Americans actually asked the question, can you identify, can you tell which is the forgery? So Anthony, take a guess, you online, which one is the forgery?
Yeah, you got me, yeah.
Yes.
I would assume the one on the right.
No, this one on the left is a forgery. So they're actually very good with this toning as well. So one needs to be, this is a master fake. So one needs to be so incredibly careful with these things nowadays. And this is to answer the earlier question. If you go onto the Alibaba website, if you just search hard enough, you're actually going to find this 5 shilling coin for sale, and there you can see the price. If you buy 10 to 99 pieces, you're only going to pay $1 per coin. The amazing thing, I actually saw one of these coins on eBay being sold for, I don't know, hundreds of US dollars. So somebody was taking a chance there. But look at these repeating depressions. You can even see these photographs on their website. There's a repeating depression on the H and the E. So just be careful of these HE 5 shilling coins.
Francois, just to add to that.
Okay, so this brings me to the final part then, and I was hoping I included this, that it's actually going to stimulate a lot of discussion at the end of this presentation. So what can we do to protect the hobby? We need to be aware of these forgeries. Can we do more? And obviously, the first thing we need to do is to keep a constant lookout for these forgeries. And one particular example was this coin. It was graded some years ago, Anthony Govender, and what a nice title. It sounds like a storybook in primary school, Anthony and the ZAR Ponde forgery. So there you go, Anthony. So Anthony, I don't know, perhaps you should actually tell the story. Anthony, do you want to tell the story?
Yeah, I don't mind, but I just want to go back to the 5 shilling quickly. Okay, and another giveaway for the fake 5 shilling is that our coins were metal struck, okay? And if you look at the 5 shillings that are fakes, they actually coin struck.
In fact, not all of them, because the later ones are actually now metal struck as well. So that 5 shilling forgery you actually get in both coin and metal struck. So just be careful. And some of I've discovered some of those Chinese alloys are magnetic, but those 5 shilling coins are not magnetic, so you can't use a magnet to identify them either.
So okay. I'll just go through this ZAR Ponde. It was many years ago. An auction house in America actually had this for sale. It graded MS, and the coin actually sold for, at that stage, between about $20,000, excluding premium. And it was then that myself and George Jacobs looked at it and we said the coin is fake. And if you look at the coin itself, the fake coin on the top, you can see the discoloring of silver or whatever composition they used on it. But the biggest giveaway was the bottom stroke of the E, which Francois has highlighted, which is a straight line. So we took it upon ourselves to write to the auction house to say, listen, the coin is a fake. And the coin was graded by PCGS. They refused to accept it. They wanted to conclude the deal, but we persisted with it. So they said they will give the coin to one of their experts to look at. So they got a Canadian who was 77 years old to look at the coin, and he deemed it as genuine. So we didn't want to leave it there because we knew that someone was buying a fake coin. So fortunately for us, we actually knew the seller of the coin, ex-South African that was residing in Australia. And we sort of made contact with him and said, listen, this is the evidence that we have, and we pointed it out to him. And I think his conscience got the better of him, and he wrote to the auction house and he said, listen, I would like to send this coin back to PCGS to have it verified. When PCGS received the coin, they wrote back to the auction house and to the owner of the coin to say, listen, we've made a mistake. The coin is indeed a fake. And subsequent to that, based on the policy of grading, they had to pay the owner out the full market value of the coin. So they kept the coin in their museum as a reminder. What I do know is that because they didn't have the expertise to grade Felt Ponde, PCGS stopped grading Felt Ponde for a period of time. So yeah, that's the long and short of this Felt Ponde.
Okay, thank you very much, Anthony. I had a careful look at this Felt Ponde, and in fact, it existed prior to 1974 already, because this is one of Levine's F33 Felt Ponde forgeries. Now, just to remind you again, what can we do to protect the hobby? And the first step, this is a classical example. We as collectors need to keep a constant eye out for these things and really act on it if we actually see these possible forgeries being offered for sale. So there's some of my suggested actions, and I hope you're going to add some more bullets. We need to stay abreast of the type of forgeries being made and the processes used. And then something I'm feeling very keen to do as well is build a database of South African forgeries. At some stage, we're going to need an update of Levine's book, and especially the silvers. You didn't really pay a lot of attention to the silver forgeries. And then we as a collector community regularly need to share knowledge of forgeries detected. And just to show you, this is a very nice resource if you haven't played around in this particular website yet. But NGC actually has got our entire section devoted to counterfeit detection. They've got top counterfeit coins and world coins, and of course some of our coins are there, and just the type of coins, that repeating depression type coins which I showed in this presentation, most of them are really transfer die counterfeits, and this is, as I write there, increasingly commonplace last few decades. A genuine coin is used to create the die, and it's essentially the story I've actually explained. So the same marks actually get reproduced on the forgeries. Easy to detect them if you've got more than one coin of that particular type. So that is the end of my presentation, Anthony. So I suppose we can try to open the floor now to see if we can answer those questions and see if Werner is actually online. So any questions?
Yeah, Werner is online, but I think you've answered these questions during your presentation, so there's nothing from him. Is there anyone else with any questions for Francois? I think this is something new to everyone, Francois, because not many of us have been exposed to the forgeries, and I think it's going to be an eye-opener for many people, mainly because of the fact that and it's proven that we cannot take the grading of third-party companies for granted. You know, they do make mistakes.
Yes.
So there is a question from Pierre, and I'm going to read it to you. Were all the gold fakes struck in 22 karat?
Wow, that's a brilliant question, because I don't know. One of the things in the back of my mind that's missing in Levine's book as well, these portable X-ray scanners is quite common nowadays. And if we can just assemble, try to assemble all these forgeries again, we must actually scan them and just see what metal composition they actually composed of. But unfortunately, at this stage, I cannot answer that particular question. So I'm not sure if they were actually struck in 22 karat. Very good question.
So maybe it's a question for Glenn when he's back on the panel the next time, is because it was graded by Saints. And I think the question that we'll pose to him is whether they did a scan on these coins to determine its metal content.
Yeah, look, that's actually very important information. But look, for example, the Z-type forgeries, those are common. We will be able to find most of those. And I think there's still people with very good collections of Felt Ponde forgeries. I think all those Felt Ponde forgeries are probably still floating around as well. So those are quite easy to track down. And it's definitely, poor Levine didn't have this fancy equipment available in those years. But obviously he would have scanned many of these coins.
Excellent.
And it's actually a good question, that, because if they struck, what is the scrap value of these forgeries? Because if they were struck in 22 karat gold, then at least they're worth their weight in gold as a forgery.
Absolutely. Guys, is there anyone else with questions? I'm sure there's a lot to digest from this year because it's all new to us. We've not been exposed to this. Some of us are not even aware that the coins we have in our collection is genuine, or whether it is a forgery. But based on this presentation here, which we will circulate to you guys that wants it, is to have a look at your coins. Let me just have a look at here. There is another question. Interesting, the 1890, is that 1892 silver half pond was scanned and it was 100% silver. That was from Werner.
Wow, okay, great stuff. Thanks, Werner. And
I must thank Werner as well, because he sent me a lot of photos from his own personal collection of Felt Ponde, of fake Felt Ponde, silver Ponde, etc. So he's got quite an extensive collection, and maybe we can expand on this here by, I think he's got some ungraded stuff as well, and maybe we can use that to determine the actual weight metal and the carat of the coins.
And the metal content, yeah. No, that's actually a very good suggestion.
Also, my good friend Jan Erasmus, I think he's on this call at the moment. He acquired just recently a very nice example of a 99 fake Felt Ponde.
A 99 Felt Ponde?
Sorry, a 99 1898 overstruck.
Yeah, those coins are probably quite common, I suppose, because most collect, well, not most, I suppose some collectors probably wanted to make their own coin as well.
Yes.
Look,
okay.
Anthony, I suppose just a request from my side. If people stumble upon these forgeries, they've probably, because you sent the invite, if people can just send photographs of these forgeries to Anthony, that we just maintain our database of forgeries and see if we can actually gradually expand that and just try to be one step ahead of the Chinese.
I think that's a very important point you raised there, Francois, because without having a coin properly authenticated, okay, a lot of people are being actually being deceived by buying into coins if they don't have the proper knowledge, etc. And what's happening now is that we're relying on third-party companies to actually authenticate these coins. And I'm not sure whether NGC, PCGS, those likes of the third party have enough knowledge on South African coins. There is another point that's posted here by Jan Erasmus. He says that I read some info on Big Lake's notes, which also places the height of the A as an easy way to seeing a different fake version. And I'm presuming that is he's talking about the felt pond.
Yeah, that's the high A.
Yes.
And those ones are actually quite easy to spot as well. And I think I actually mentioned this. You also mentioned this a while ago in one of the coin meetings. It could have been pre-COVID where everybody still assembled, but on Engelbrecht's book on the front cover, of course, he's got a couple of money in South Africa. He photographed a number of coins in a very nice position, and the felt pond on that front cover actually looks like a high A forgery as well.
You're absolutely correct.
I wonder if he actually did that intentionally, or he just grabbed the wrong coin out of the Absa collection.
I wouldn't think he would put a fake there, so I think it was unnoticed by him. I did also pick that up. I posted it on the forum to say, what is wrong with this picture? And a lot of people were looking at other stuff, but they never looked at the felt pond. Okay, Francois, if you can switch back to your camera.
Okay, just let me stop sharing this.
Yeah, Francois, that I think is going to open the eyes of many people on this forum and those watching elsewhere. A lot of questions will come post this presentation that you've done, which is well researched, well presented as usual. And I think from the whole community, our special thanks to you. Without your input into South African numismatics and what you have done, you know, it's just tremendous. I don't think there's any more accolades and awards we can give to you. We've given you almost everything that we can, but I think you must continue with the great work. Looking forward to your next presentation, which I'm sure I'm sure you're going to give us some mouth-watering stuff. Are my eyes deceiving me in that the soldier on the F-27 appears to be facing away from the original that is posted by one of the attendees?
Just let me go back to F-27. Yes, if we missed that all the years, that would actually be quite embarrassing. No, look, what I can see now is he's facing, it seemed to be, he's facing the same direction as the other points. That's actually a good point, but from what I can quickly see, there might be, that's actually a very good point. Yeah, look, I'll have to study it in detail from the photographs. But
well, I'm glad we've got I'm glad we've got some of the participants with eagle eyes and they're paying attention.
Yeah, look, I suppose after a few beers, you're not going to notice the difference, but now suddenly that solder doesn't look the same.
There's another post from the same person who said it appears to be facing away on the original.
Yeah.
You're going to share your screen there, Francois, quickly.
Okay, just let me share it again. Just let me go back.
So while you're sharing your screen, Francois, I think one has got to acknowledge Eli Levine as being an authority on ZAR coinage, and the book on the coinage and counterfeits of the ZAR is quite a comprehensive one. And every single numismatist who is in the arena and the field of collecting ZAR must have one in their library.
That's very true, and you can actually pick them up very cheaply on Bid-or-Buy, so it's actually a very easy book to find.
Yeah.
Now, is it this photograph he's referring to?
It looks like a valid question and a point.
Just be careful. Just be careful.
Look at the genuine and
look, the only comment I can make, because I've actually photographed a number of coins as well, the lighting source you use and the way the light actually falls on the coin can actually be very deceptive at times. I'm going to come back to this particular slide, but I actually want to show it, this example of the silver half pond, where I actually compare it to the real one. Now, this is the same coin, but if you just look at the depression there below the upper bar of the F, you almost don't see it in that particular photograph, but it's very clear on this particular one. And even some of the other details. So depending on the lighting source, one needs to be very careful when you compare coins. So let's just go down to F27. Now, I'm not sure, look, the posture, it might just be the light falling on this side of the coin that's creating this illusion that is actually looking in a different direction. So just be careful of that.
Yeah,
and
I think if I'm looking at this photo, it definitely looks like the one on the right, the genuine. He is got his head turned. And even if you look at the size of his arm, his right arm, it looks bigger.
Yeah, just be careful of who is striking in this area, because I suppose the entire arm is there as well. But this might just be an artifact of the photograph, so just be incredibly careful. Okay, but very good point. Nice picking that up, and that's a kind of investigative journalism we actually need to do with these forgeries.
Francois, one of the things that you mentioned at the start of this presentation, which I was totally unaware of until you sent me the proofread of this, is the leather-bound copies of this book. I mean, in my collecting years, I've never seen one.
Yes.
Do you actually have one in your library?
Yes, that photograph in this presentation is in my library, but I was very fortunate to have picked it up in that same store where I got the other original Levine book. So I've got a suspicion it was probably Levine's collection, and I was just incredibly lucky to pick up that copy. But apart from that one copy, I've never seen another copy in my life. So
I'm just
quite a nice.
I'm just wondering if anyone else, on the forum actually has a copy.
Yes, you're looking for one for your collection.
Yeah, I don't have one.
Yeah.
I also know that the late Peter Wilson didn't have one. Okay, Francois, if you can switch back to video. So I just want to go back to that Phoenix auction before we terminate. And thanks to everyone for attending this presentation, even though it's a holiday, but it's a Saturday. But this is much needed in the numismatic fraternity, that we actually have these kind of discussions, these meetings, these presentations to to keep numismatics alive, if I can put it in a different way. And our intention is that we plan to have regular chats like this. We're also going to have a panel where we're going to debate certain items. We'll rope in a few people like Werner, Johan Goos, Pia Norki, yourself, Francois, and we talk about certain aspects and get the views of the panel. Okay. The other thing that we plan to do is to expand on the talk that we did last year on Kruger's bluebacks, which is the government's nota. And in conjunction with Johan Goos, we're actually going to expand and go into more in-depth detail on the different types of cancellations. So that is a very interesting area as well. Francois, I'm going to go back to the Phoenix auction of 1974, was it? Okay. And obviously, that was when Eli Levine started disposing of most of his personal collection in terms of what he had. I'm not sure what age you have been at that time, but probably still starting off your collecting area. One of the things that came out, and I've been asked this question on numerous occasions, and even the late Peter Wilson also questioned. In that collection was a complete set of 1892 coins that were sold in proof. They were presented to Beerlats van Blokland, who was Kruger's right-hand man. He was the ambassador to the Netherlands. Okay, he was also instrumental in the Delagoa Bay Railway line. Okay.
Yes.
If you notice in that auction, and I think if you go back and have a look at it, okay, there was absolutely no 1892 penny in proof in that collection. Now, if Kruger presented him with a collection of 1892 proofs, okay, the question arises is, and what I'm trying to get to is that if you look at the total mintage figure between NGC and PCGS, it far exceeds the actual numbers that should have been out there. Okay. Do you think that a 1892 proof penny was actually minted?
Awesome. Are you giving me this incredibly hard question at the end of this talk? Peter Wilson and myself actually discussed it on many occasions, and I think you were actually present in some of those meetings as well. And the possibility still exists that what is considered as a proof penny were just the initial strikes in Germany, and they were struck very well, and that's a huge possibility because we actually struggle. Look, I don't know those pennies very well, and I haven't got a proof penny myself, so I can't really comment on it. But there is still a possibility, based on that evidence that initial set presented, there wasn't a proof penny, that it was actually never formally minted. And then just to complete the set, eventually some of those very well struck coins were actually just added. So that's of course a huge possibility. Levine in his book, before we make any judgment, however, or conclude on this matter, it's worthwhile to read Levine's book again, because he gives very clear indications what he considers as a proof penny and what not, and the sharpness of the edge of the letters, and it must be as sharp as a blade of an ice skate. I think he even used those words. That is a very nice area of research, and why don't you give us a very nice presentation on this topic as the next interesting talk, and then I'll ask the difficult questions.
In my personal experience, I found that with any coins that struck off a new die, okay, and this is a brand new die, you would get the first 10 to 15 coins displaying absolutely proof-like images. Thereafter, as the die starts wearing out, you're going to get your normal struck coins. But the first coins will always give you proof-like finishes. I see that NGC and PCGS are grading a lot of coins, even the pennies, proof-like. Not proof, but proof-like.
Very, very interesting. There's a couple of members of the community who's actually experts on these proof ZAR coins. So perhaps you can actually twist one of, I've got a particular name in mind. You must actually twist his arm, and he must actually give us a presentation on these proof coins, because I think he knows it very well.
Well, these are the kind of interesting questions and debates that we can put to a panel the next time we have a session. And it's not only going to be talks where we present, but it's going to be an open debate, etc., on interesting items pertinent to South African numismatics. There's a lot of questions that people have asked me about decimal coins. I'm not an expert in that field. You are, and I'm hoping that we can have a debate around those things as well.
Excellent.
Okay, guys, it's come to the end, and it's been a very entertaining Saturday afternoon. You didn't have to leave your own. You've sat at the luxury of your home to view this presentation, not going out. We're looking at using technology to reach people that are interested in numismatics, more especially South African numismatics in this country, around the world. And with this kind of platform that we've now formed, we hope to take it further. I've had some discussions with Glenn Skuman as well this week, and Francois, I'll keep in touch with you on some of the initiatives that we are planning in reaching the masses, and what we can do just to sustain numismatics, just to keep it alive, and make sure that the people get the right sort of information they need to sustain this hobby. Right now, we know that COVID has placed a lot of restrictions on people. The South African numismatic market is not in a healthy state in terms of sales, in terms of purchasing, etc. People are using a lot of platforms to purchase their items. I do know I've spoken to a lot of dealers as well. They don't seem to be quite happy with things that are happening. But as collectors, we need to do our bit. And Francois, once again, on behalf of myself and everyone on this forum, and those of you watching elsewhere on other platforms to this live feed, thank you very, very much, Francois. It is much appreciated.
Huge pleasure. So.
Okay. All right, guys, that's it for this Saturday afternoon. Thank you for your time, and we will keep you posted on the next talk and the next presentation that we're going to have. In the meantime, once this is over, I'll have the recording and I'll post it through on the various platforms for everybody to view. Okay. So have a good Saturday afternoon. Have a good weekend till the next time we meet. And once again, thank you for joining into South African Coin Talk. Goodbye.